just in my defence on the Global Focus program, we were in China and we were hosted by some wonderful people, and we started drinking some rice wine, which I soon learned that it's actually made from Australian sorghum. And as a proud Australian sorghum grower, I was a representative of Australia, so I thought I'd better get stuck into it. Not highly recommended, I can tell you that. And as David said, when I first got the Nuffield Scholarship, I wanted to improve nitrogen in irrigated cotton, and I can say after 2 years it has changed my views on farming, and it's been a remarkable experience. I'd first like to thank my sponsors, Cotton Australia and the Cotton Research and Development Corporation. It is the first time they have invested into a scholar, and I'd like to thank them for giving me the opportunity of a lifetime. I'd like to thank Nuffield Australia for firstly accepting me as a scholar, and in particular Jim Gelch for support and guidance during my scholarship. I wish Jim well with his new position as CEO of Nuffield International. I'd like to thank my extended family for allowing me to step away from the family business for the extended period of time. I'd like to thank Alex Stevens, who managed my farms while I travelled overseas. And to my beautiful wife, it was very hard to stay at home and look after our 2 young children by herself. Thank you for your patience. A little bit of background information. My wife and I have 3 beautiful children together, Harriet, Will and Henry. As Dave said, I'm now managing one of the family properties, but I'm also involved in a corporate-owned business in Goondiwindi. So yeah, it's great to see both sides of the story. The family has been growing irrigated cotton since 1982 and has been a dominant crop since. So what is the issue? This graph shows the current and world expected fertiliser use. Countries around the world have already put restrictions on nitrogen use to decrease nitrous oxide emissions, which is a major greenhouse gas, which is 298 times worse than carbon dioxide. One of the main questions I had before starting my scholarship is that can we still grow high yielding irrigated cotton if nitrogen restrictions were introduced? So what is the issue at a farm level? Well, for me it was simple. I was just spending far too much money on nitrogen fertiliser, up to $450 alone on nitrogen fertiliser. I believe that there's a lot of good salespeople out there in the fertiliser industry, and to be honest, I was just taken for a ride. This graph shows a nitrogen trial undertaken at home. It shows that the standard rate of 300 kilos of applied nitrogen per hectare, which resulted in a yield of 13 bales per hectare, resulted in a nitrogen use figure of 9 kilos of lint per applied kilo of nitrogen, which is actually below the industry target of 13. So, when I started my Nuffield Scholarship, I was solely focusing on the first box, nitrogen. I wanted to study different rates, timing of application methods, and types of different nitrogen products. I soon discovered after travelling that farmers and researchers and consultants were all asking about my soil properties, my irrigation methods, and the weather conditions on farm. I soon learnt that to improve nitrogen use efficiency, I had to look a lot further than the first box. Biological farming. You'd have to ask why an irrigated cotton farmer from Goondiwindi would go and visit an organic biological farmer on his Nuffield travels. Well, I guess this is what Nuffield is all about. To think outside the box and do something out of your comfort zone. I'm glad I made this decision because it has honestly changed my life. Gary has changed the way I view farming. I now believe in biological farming practices and have started to implement these changes at home. Gary is amazing. His ideas and thoughts about soil properties and his mottos and theories are just very simple. He simply told me this: that soil is a living organism, and organisms need feeding every day. Different plants, soil organisms feed on different plant species, and different plant species feed on different organisms. So diversity is needed in the farming system. So why are rotations so important? On the Global Focus Program, we met with starch potato growers in the Netherlands who were going bankrupt because they had been growing starch potatoes back to back for a number of years. This is because of nematode problems, or nematode problems with sentinel growth. In the US, I met with cotton growers that have been growing back to back cotton for over 100 years. They've since changed to a rotation because they also were going bankrupt. This highlighted to me that the farming system at home was a monoculture and we relied on cotton too much. Rotations are important as it provides diversity. Firstly, legumes provide nitrogen through nitrogen fixation, and cereals provide carbon, which in turn provides organic matter for the soil. Do cover crops work? I wanted to travel to England to visit farmers that are restricted on the amount of nitrogen they can apply under the EU CAP regulations. I soon discovered that farmers are using cover crops to decrease the amount of nitrogen applied. I was very lucky enough to spend the day with Jake Freestone, a UK Nuffield scholar. He is using a number of different cover crops to decrease the amount of nitrogen applied. He is using multi-species cover crops to do this. How does irrigation affect nitrogen use efficiency? I was lucky enough to visit Cotton Incorporated in the United States. They are the similar organisation to the Cotton Research and Development Corporation. They spend over $100 million on cotton research alone. They were surprised when I told them that 85% of the Australian cotton industry still uses flood irrigation. Their concerns is that flood irrigation leads to waterlogging, which in turn leads to denitrification. Once the soil is 60% saturated, it is prone to waterlogging, and in turn, nitrous oxide emissions are produced. They strongly suggested that irrigators need to move away to overhead sprinkler irrigation to reduce waterlogging. In California, I saw this overhead sprinkler irrigator, which is using cover crops to reduce the amount of evaporation by 13%. On my travels, I was fortunate enough to spend time with Dwayne Beck at the Dakota Lakes Research Farm. He has been zero-till for the last 30 years and has become a world leader in no-till. Dwayne has a simple message. You need to take the E out of ET, that is, take evaporation out of evapotranspiration. Nearly 100% of Australian cotton is grown with genetically modified varieties, like Bulgar. The licence agreement with Monsanto is that it is a requirement that 100% of the field needs to be cultivated after harvest to a depth of 10 centimetres. This is part of the resistant management plan to control Heliothis pupae. Tillage is also used to control compaction. The problem with compaction is that it restricts the root growth in the soil, which in turn reduces the amount of water and nutrient uptake. Growers also, the new 7760 round bale picker is a prime example, which weighs 32 tonne and is causing compaction problems every time it moves across the paddock. I was lucky enough to meet with Larkin Martin, a farmer in Alabama. She puts all her farm input data into a computer program to create maps like this. This shows a pH variability across one of her fields. She soil tests across these management zones every year, which means every hectare on a property is getting soil tested or soil sampled, resulting in 6,000 tests. In the US, a soil test can only cost $8 per sample, compared to in Australia, which costs around $200 per sample. Larkin then uses variable rate technology to apply lime, synthetic fertilisers and manures, which will decrease the amount of nitrogen used. I was lucky enough to travel to Japan to see the latest technology in real-time soil sensing. These professors have been working on this technology for the last 20 years and have just commercialised and manufactured 2 machines. One machine is staying in Japan to soil map organic rice paddies, and the second machine is being exported to Brazil to map forestry plantations. Recommendations to industry. Well, I think it's pretty simple. On my travels, I've soon learned that irrigated growers need to change their farming practices to improve soil health and diversity. Cotton in Australia is still a young industry which only started in the 1960s, and we still use a lot of the same farming practices that were introduced then. Simple message to irrigated cotton growers is to stop growing back-to-back cotton, use more rotations, plant cover crops, reduce waterlogging, reduce tillage, create management zones, and use variable rate technology. So, what have I changed on my farm? Firstly, the scholarship has given me the confidence to challenge my current farming practices. It has given me the ability to question everything and the ability to implement change. I've soon learned that to implement change, you are the one that has to take responsibility and leadership. Otherwise, change won't happen and things will continue on as normal. I've not ploughed since returning home and have seen the instant benefits of saving money on fuel, labour, and also time spent in the tractor. I've planted more legumes, including fava beans, which are fixing nitrogen into the soil. I planted my first cover crop, which was a French millet, over summer. I've since sprayed it out and planted wheat directly into the cover over winter. I've now also planted a barley cover crop, which I've sprayed out and plant cotton in it in October. I've also purchased a new zero-till planter, which is a precision double disc opener, which has allowed me to undertake these changes. I've improved irrigation technologies, or techniques, by doubling up 3-inch siphons to improve flow rate, which reduces waterlogging. I'm also started using NDVI satellite imagery and using EM38 and yield maps to create my own management zones, and I'm starting to look at applying variable rate gypsum across these zones. So this is my ultimate goal, to be a no-till irrigated farmer. So, how can I introduce irrigated farming practices to irrigated cotton? Firstly, it's going to be difficult and challenging, but I'm up to the task, and I'm very passionate about conservation farming practices and biological farming practices. Since returning from my travels, it has changed my views on farming and realised that I was very much a conventional farmer. I've got a little bit of time, so I'm just going to go off subject a little bit and say that I was born with cerebral palsy, and I realised only yesterday when Rob Cook was in his presentation, or during his talk, and he mentioned about changing and doing things differently. And I realised to myself, I've been doing things differently my whole life as having cerebral palsy, and I've never looked backwards in doing things. So all I have to do is to implement this to my farming business and farming practices. I truly believe by implementing rotations, cover crops and zero-till, I truly believe I can be a better farmer. I just need to stop treating the soil like dirt and treating it like an asset. Thank you.